You ever wake up knowing deep down that everything has changed? That was me lying in a sterile hospital bed, staring at the ceiling tubes running from my arms like I'd been plugged into the wall. My name is Riley Tran, 9 years old, cybersecurity analyst, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought family meant unconditional love. Turns out, I was financing their comfort while they forgot I existed. It started with an infection. Nothing serious, they said. A mild fever that turned into sepsis overnight. I nearly died. My kidneys failed. I was unconscious for 2 days, and when I came to the room was empty. No flowers, no visitors, no missed calls. Just the hum of machines and the taste of metal in my mouth. The nurse, bless her, thought I had family on the way. I gave her a weak smile and lied. They're probably stuck in traffic. I reached for my phone trembling and opened social media. I shouldn't have. But curiosity is a cruel thing. There they were. My mom, Veronica, sipping mimosas on a yacht. My sister Lana, mid-cocktail with some new guy. She captioned, "Finally found my real soulmate." And my stepfather Greg, playing golf with some local big shots. Where Maui? When the exact week I was coding in a coma, I froze. Not even a text. They knew I was sick. I had messaged our family group chat before I got rushed to ER. Lana left it on read. Greg replied with a thumbs up. Mom sent a beach emoji. That was the moment. The moment I knew I wasn't just sick, I was done. My phone showed the last charge on our shared credit card. Hilton Grand Spa, Hawaii. $1,284,000. Funny how it was supposed to be for emergencies. Like I don't know ICU admissions. The second I was able to sit up without puking, I got to work. Not out of anger, out of necessity. My family wasn't going to change. But I could. First thing I did, logged into my bank accounts. All the automatic transfers I had set up to help them with bills, mortgage, car payments. I canceled every single one. I even reported the credit card stolen. Guess who technically owned the account? Me. Next, I called Asha, my financial advisor. Riley, oh my God, I heard you were in the hospital. Are you okay? Getting there. Listen. Asha, I need to remove some people from my account's beneficiaries. Emergency contacts, all of it. Lana, Mom, Greg. Wipe them out. Are you sure that's a pretty major step? I'm not just sure, I'm certain. Then came my lawyer, Marcus. We'd drafted my will together last year, back when I still believed blood was thicker than betrayal. Marcus, I need to revoke the power of attorney I gave my mother, and I want to redo the will, completely. Clean slate. He didn't ask questions, just said he'd handle it. That silence, that quiet understanding meant everything. Over the next 48 hours, I undid years of generosity, disguised as obligation. The utilities in my name for their house gone. The insurance plan, covering all their cars, canceled. Family phone plan, snipped. I even had the audacity to remove myself from their mortgage, a loan I co-signed, so they could get a better rate. Called the bank and explained I was recovering from a serious illness and could no longer support the liability. They'll have to refinance or sell, I told the rep. Understood, she said. We'll begin proceedings immediately. Meanwhile, my family kept posting like influencers on steroids. Lana uploaded a reel of her and soulmate number 6 doing a beach yoga pose. Greg captioned his photo, "Retirement suits me." And me, I was sipping broth through a straw, checking my vitals and plotting freedom. When I was discharged on day 8, I'd lost 12 pounds and most of my patience. I went home, ordered pho from my favorite Vietnamese spot, curled up on the couch and waited. 6:42 p.m. The phone rang. It was Mom. Riley, something's wrong with our card. It got declined at the hotel restaurant. Huh. Weird. I said deadpan. Maybe call the bank. We did. They said it was reported stolen. That's right, it was. While I was unconscious. Seems like someone else was using it. Silence. Riley, you listen here. You fix this now. We're stranded in Hawaii. I thought you paid for this vacation yourselves. Isn't that what you told everyone? Click. 10 minutes later, Lana called. Her voice was a banshee's scream. You absolute psycho. The hotel wants us to pay for another night. Maybe ask your soulmate to spot you. The one from your couple's massage post. You're stalking us. You need therapy. I needed family. You gave me beach emojis. She hung up. Greg was next. Calm. Calculated. Kiddo, there's clearly been a misunderstanding. When we get back, we can talk. For now, can you just unblock the card so we can get flights? No misunderstanding, Greg. You prioritized sand over a hospital bed. Live with it. They kept calling. I turned off my phone and slept better than I had in years. The next morning, I made coffee, opened my laptop, and watched the world go on. It was the first time in forever I felt like I was actually in control. And that was only the beginning. By the time my family landed back on the mainland, reality had already started tightening around them like a noose. I wasn't watching, not directly, but people talk, and I'd made sure to set certain dominoes in motion long before they even noticed things were off. See, when you hold people up for years paying bills, covering emergencies, floating their luxuries, you become invisible. But the moment you let go, the crash is deafening. They made it home somehow. Word got around that Lana borrowed from her new boyfriend's crypto earnings to cover the hotel bill, and Greg pulled an old credit card from a drawer to book last-minute economy seats. I could imagine his face when he realized I'd canceled the airline rewards account too. Oops. The real unraveling didn't happen all at once. It came in waves. First, a frantic voicemail from Mom. No electricity, no water, no clue why the house felt like it was shutting down. I didn't respond. Then a string of texts from Lana. Did you cancel our phone plan? WTF. Followed by another. This is actual abuse. I blocked her. It was quieter after that. 2 days later, a foreclosure notice landed on their doorstep. I know this because I got a copy to standard paperwork when your name's on a loan. The bank didn't waste time. When I explained I was withdrawing from the mortgage due to health reasons and financial vulnerability, they didn't ask twice. Apparently, sepsis and betrayal look great on paper. That was the moment they realized I hadn't just hit pause. I'd hit delete. The knocking came next. Loud. Persistent. I opened the door to find Lana on my doorstep, eyes red eyeliner smeared like she'd just come from a bad audition. She held her phone like it might shield her from the truth. I just want to talk, she said, voice cracking, about what I asked. I was drunk when I said those things. Okay, I didn't mean it. That text about how maybe if you died, you'd finally matter, I didn't mean it. You know how I get. You do. That's the problem. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just closed the door. An hour later, Mom showed up. She brought tissues, probably for show, and that same fake concern she always wore when she needed something. She started with guilt. I was out of my mind with worry, she said. I didn't know what to do. So we tried to stay positive. Positive, I repeated. Is that what the 47 vacation posts were? Positivity. Her mouth opened, then closed. Nothing to say when the evidence was photographic. Greg tried the rational route. Sat me down at a cafe near my apartment uninvited. Slid a folder across the table filled with overdue notices, bank statements, a breakdown of what it would take to get their finances in order. It was detailed, practical, desperate. You can help us fix this, he said. It doesn't have to be like this. No, Greg. It does. Because while I was lying in a hospital bed with a machine keeping me alive, you were tagging yourself at golf resorts. He had no answer. Just picked up his coffee and stared into it, like it might explain things for him. When the calls started hitting 20 a day, I stopped answering altogether. I changed my number. They started using friends' phones. Burner apps, even the landline at the cheap motel they checked into after losing the house. The messages were a mix of fury and theatrics, blaming me for their ruin, accusing me of heartlessness, throwing out words like abandonment and mental instability. I ignored them all. Then came the wildest attempt yet, a call from a girl I hadn't heard from in years. Rachel, one of Lana's Instagram friends. She said she was doing a survey about family estrangement. Hypothetically, she said, if a sister wrote you a heartfelt apology, like really detailed, would you consider reconnecting? I laughed, not politely. Tell Lana she can't crowdsource closure. And using you as a go-between is exactly why she lost access to me in the first place. The ambush at work sealed it. Greg and Mom showed up at my office building in tailored clothes and hollow smiles, pretending to be concerned parents. They talked their way past reception and waited in the lobby like a couple of characters from a low-budget drama. Riley, sweetheart, we just want 5 minutes. Security, I said calmly. These people are harassing me. Please escort them out. They tried to protest, but the guards weren't having it. A coworker later told me the footage went semi-viral on our internal Slack. People were impressed I didn't even flinch. One colleague started calling it the Parent Trap incident. But the best part, the silence that followed. Until, of course, it didn't. They retaliated in the pettiest way imaginable. Lana posted an Instagram story about how I was unhinged post-illness and cutting off family in a mental spiral. Her followers started asking questions, most notably where she'd been during my ICU stay. Some remembered the vacation posts. Others dug deeper. The story imploded before she could delete it. Even my old college roommate messaged me, "Holy crap, saw the drama. Proud of you for cutting the cord. You deserve better." Meanwhile, their financial spiral worsened. Greg applied for a personal loan using my name as a reference. The bank called to verify. "Mr. Chen is unemployed recently. Lost his home and has no assets I'm aware of," I said. "Also, we're estranged. They thanked me and denied the loan. Mom took it further. Claimed I was abusing them financially. Filed a report with Adult Protective Services, hoping to paint me as some manipulative monster withholding care. The investigator who showed up was professional but skeptical. She asked questions. I showed receipts. Literally. Screenshots, bank statements, texts, vacation posts, the whole miserable timeline. "Miss Tran," she said, flipping her notebook closed, "this isn't elder abuse. It's called setting boundaries. Legally, you're not obligated to fund your parents' lifestyle, especially when they're able-bodied adults who chose not to be there for you." She paused at the door, her voice gentler. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. You deserved better." And just like that, the narrative they tried to spin unraveled. But the worst was still coming, and I was ready for it. I thought the failed APS report would be the last straw. I thought once the official system told them no, they'd back off. But people like my family don't stop when they lose. They escalate. The next hit came from a direction I didn't expect. They tried to reach Tom. Tom wasn't just my lawyer. He'd become a friend. Someone who stood by me through everything from rewriting my will to navigating the legal maze of disentangling from people who thought sharing DNA meant owning your future. Apparently, Mom tracked down his mother on Facebook. Carol. Sweet woman, part of a local book club, not someone used to drama in her DMs. She messaged me the same night. "Riley." She wrote, "I think your mother's trying to sabotage you." The message she forwarded was 3 pages long. My mother had taken the time to craft a narrative where I was mentally unstable, emotionally abusive, financially manipulative, and in urgent need of intervention. She said I'd isolated myself and was clinging to a lawyer to feed my delusions. She even hinted Tom was exploiting me, possibly coercing me into legal decisions I didn't fully understand. I read the whole thing twice, My hands didn't shake. My breathing didn't change. That was the scariest part. I felt nothing, just a dull, final click in the machine of my emotions, like the last piece falling into place. They weren't just trying to guilt me back into their grasp. They were actively trying to destroy the only healthy support system I had. I called Tom the next morning. "I want a restraining order," I said. "All 3 of them. Harassment, stalking, defamation. Everything we can pin." He didn't hesitate. "We've got enough. But are you sure you want to make it public? I'm past caring how it looks. I need peace." The hearing was set for 2 weeks later. I didn't tell anyone at work, didn't mention it to friends. I wanted to walk in without pity, without spectacle. But they showed up ready to perform. Greg in a suit I paid for 3 Christmases ago. Lana in a modest dress, clutching a tissue like she was auditioning for a courtroom drama. Mom in pearls and crocodile tears, whispering rehearsed lines to the lawyer they somehow afforded. They went first, told the judge I had changed since the illness, that I'd become paranoid delusional, convinced they were out to get me. They described me as emotionally erratic, unstable, unwilling to engage. They brought up old text messages, cherry-picked ones from years ago, where I vented about work stress, financial anxiety. They painted a picture of a woman spiraling out of control, lashing out at the very people trying to save her. Then it was my turn. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't match their drama. I brought receipts, screenshots of vacation posts, texts where they mocked my hospitalization, the group chat where I begged for help and got emojis in return. I submitted bank documents, termination letters for utilities, canceled credit cards. I gave a calm, clear summary of what happened from the day I fell sick to the moment I realized they saw me only as a source of funding. "Your Honor," I said, looking the judge in the eye. They didn't just ignore me when I nearly died. They laughed at me. They used the money I gave them to celebrate while I was hooked to machines. And when I stopped, they tried to ruin me. I'm not asking for vengeance. I'm asking for protection. The courtroom was quiet. The judge leaned back, tapped her pen twice, and nodded. "Temporary restraining order granted," she said. "A hearing for a permanent injunction will be scheduled." We exited in silence, or at least I tried to. Riley Mom called after me, voice cracking. "We can still fix this. You don't need lawyers. We're family." I turned once steady. "You made lawyers necessary. I'm just enforcing the boundary you refused to respect." 3 weeks later, the permanent restraining order was granted. They couldn't call me, write me, text me, show up at my home or work, or post about me online. Any violation meant immediate arrest. And then came the silence, the kind that hums in your ears after too much noise. I thought it would feel cold. It didn't. It felt like air conditioning on a muggy day. Clean, controlled, mine. Around that time, I got a call from Mark, my supervisor at the cybersecurity firm, where I'd worked remotely during my recovery. "Riley," he said, "Technova Industries reached out. They want to poach you." I blinked. "Wait, what?" "Yeah. VP position. Twice the salary. Full benefits. They said the security framework you implemented last year saved them from a major breach last month. You apparently prevented millions in losses." I didn't even hesitate. I took the offer. The timing was poetic. While I was signing a contract with bonuses, equity, and my own corner office, my former family was getting evicted from the roadside motel they'd been squatting in. I found out through Sebastian, my cousin, the only person from that side I still respected. He texted me not to gossip, but because he figured I deserved to know. "They're out," he wrote. Hotel finally kicked them. Greg sleeping in the car. I replied with a single word, "Wed." Later that week, Lana called from a payphone. Her voice cracked between sentences. "Riley, please. We're homeless. Mom's out of blood pressure meds. We need help. Have you considered employment?" I asked. flipping through onboarding documents at my new desk. I'm working part-time at Target. Lana. That's not a career. That's a shift. What about Greg? No one will hire him at his age, and Mom's stressed. She's not too stressed to post about me on Facebook. A beat of silence. She didn't realize I still had access to her public feed. That's different, she said finally. She's just upset. She's spreading lies. I'm done, Lana. Click. My first day at Technova was surreal. I had a team, a generous budget, a CEO who shook my hand and said, "You saved this company." I ate lunch with engineers who respected me, talked shop with directors who valued my opinion. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't carrying anyone, just building something. But karma wasn't done yet. Mom created a GoFundMe titled "Help a Family Abandoned by Their Sick Daughter." Claimed I'd had a breakdown, that I'd left them penniless out of spite. Said she couldn't afford her meds. Greg couldn't eat. Lana was working 2 jobs to survive. What she didn't realize, people in tech knew me, respected me. A few even recognized my name from that post. Within hours, the comments section was flooded. Former clients, ex-colleagues, even a CTO from a previous job. Riley saved our system from a complete breach. She's a hero, not a villain. This campaign is disgusting. Riley, is the most competent professional I've worked with. You should be ashamed. The page was down in 48 hours. I didn't report it. Didn't gloat. Just saved a few screenshots. For the record. For peace of mind. For proof that the world wasn't entirely blind. And as I stood on the balcony of my new apartment, city lights stretching out like possibility, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Stillness. Real deep, unshakable calm. They couldn't reach me anymore. Success didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like exhale. Quiet mornings without debt collectors calling. Afternoons where I could choose peace over obligation. Nights that didn't include guilt-tripping voicemails or emergency Venmo requests. My new job at Technova was everything I never realized I needed. The team respected me. My voice mattered. And when the CEO asked me to lead a new cybersecurity initiative, I said yes without hesitation. I had become the kind of person who didn't wait for permission anymore. Somewhere between almost ding and reclaiming my life, I had built something stronger than survival. I had built certainty. Meanwhile, my former family was still stuck in freefall. I heard bits and pieces through Sebastian, not because I asked, but because he thought I deserved to know the ripple effects. Lana had been fired from Target for showing up late too many times and arguing with customers. Apparently, retail didn't suit someone used to spa days and personal trainers. She tried to revive her influencer career, but most of her followers vanished after the GoFundMe debacle. The few that stayed weren't enough to fund her lifestyle, let alone her rent. Greg finally found work at a hardware store part-time. Mom got a job at a call center answering questions she barely understood for hours on end. They moved into a studio apartment, argued constantly, and blamed me for everything. I didn't feel triumphant, just detached, like I was watching characters I used to know in a bad TV rerun. And that was what shocked me the most, not the crash, but how little I cared when it happened. There was no satisfaction, no smug "I told you so" moment. Just distance. Like grief, but quieter. Tom and I had started spending more time together. It was slow at first, thoughtful. He'd stop by with Thai food when I worked late, or drop off books he thought I'd like. He never asked about my family unless I brought it up. And when I did, he just listened. No advice, no judgment, just space to be real. One night as we sat on my balcony eating ice cream out of the tub, I finally told him everything. Not just the ICU, not just the betrayal, but the years leading up to it. The small ways I disappeared to keep their lives afloat. How I was praised only when my wallet was open. How guilt had been weaponized so thoroughly I hadn't realized I was drowning until I came up for air. Tom didn't flinch. He just said, "Riley, what you did took guts. Most people stay trapped in toxic loops their whole lives. You broke yours." He kissed my forehead like a promise. I didn't cry, but something deep inside me finally settled. His family surprisingly welcomed me, like they'd been waiting for me. Carol, the same woman my mom had tried to manipulate, became the kind of mother I'd only seen in sitcoms. She invited me to dinner, texted me random soup recipes, and asked me how my week was. Not to guilt me, just to know. Tom's nieces started calling me Aunt Riley by their own choice. No one pressured them. No one asked me to play a role. It just happened. Like healing sometimes does, quietly, steadily, without announcement. They didn't care that I wasn't blood. They cared that I showed up, that I laughed at their jokes, remembered their birthdays, helped with homework. When algebra got tough, for the first time I understood what family could feel like when it wasn't conditional. I began doing things I'd never had time or energy for before. I joined a hiking group, learned how to cook something beyond microwave meals, took weekend trips just because I could. I picked up photography again, a hobby I had abandoned when life got too heavy. The camera helped me see things differently, not just the world, but myself. Framed through a new lens, I wasn't the girl who needed saving. I was the woman who chose herself. Then came the next blow from the past. Sebastian called one evening hesitant. "Riley, your mom got arrested." I paused. "For what?" "She tried to shoplift from a grocery store. Makeup and expensive cheese. When they caught her, she had a full meltdown in the aisle. Screaming that her daughter abandoned her, ruined her life, and drove her to it." I let the words settle. "Did she mention the part where I was in the ICU while she was tanning in Maui?" She did. But it backfired. The store manager's daughter had been in intensive care recently. He wasn't sympathetic. The charges were dropped, but the damage wasn't. The story made local news. A short article. "Local woman blames daughter for shoplifting incident." I didn't even need to read it. The headline was enough. That was who she'd become. A caricature of martyrdom clinging to a fantasy where I was the villain and she the victim. By then, I had started speaking at tech conferences. My name was showing up in places I never imagined: industry panels, leadership articles, even a piece in Forbes about women in cybersecurity. The article featured a photo of me standing in my office, Mochi, asleep at my feet, sun streaming through the glass. The caption read, "From ICU patient to vice president. Riley Tran's code didn't just protect data, it saved futures." Greg called 2 days after it published. The number was unknown, but I answered out of curiosity. "Riley," he said quietly, "I saw the article. I'm proud of you." I didn't say anything. "We're really struggling," he continued. "Just a small loan. Enough to get back on our feet." And there it was. The real reason for the call. "No," I said simply. A pause. "But we're family." "No, Greg. We used to be." I hung up. That night, Tom wrapped an arm around me as we sat on the couch. Mochi snored softly between us. The TV played something forgettable in the background, but all I could hear was the quiet truth: I was finally free. Not just from their reach, but from the need for their approval. This was my life now. Built from the ashes, planted in boundaries, and watered with intention. I had love, safety, a career, a community. And none of it came from the people who thought they owned me. They had lost their golden goose. And I had gained a whole sky. Life had a rhythm now. Not flashy or dramatic, just steady. The kind of rhythm that feels like trust. trust in myself, in the people around me, in the choices I'd made. I no longer walked on eggshells. I no longer second-guessed every financial decision or checked my phone, expecting some emotional ambush. Peace wasn't loud, but it was consistent. And consistency was something I'd never had growing up. Tom and I moved in together that spring. It wasn't a grand announcement, no big speech, just a quiet weekend of cardboard boxes, shared closet space, and a golden retriever who claimed the couch as hers. Mochi adapted faster than either of us. She picked her favorite blanket, her sunspot on the balcony, and seemed to know in the way dogs do that this was finally home. We planned a small wedding for the fall. Nothing extravagant, just the people who mattered. No blood ties, just soul ties. Friends who brought me soup when I was sick. Co-workers who stood by me through the court hearings. Neighbors who watered my plants when I traveled. Carol baked the cake. Tom's nieces scattered flower petals down the aisle. When we said our vows, I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just smiled, because for the first time in my life, every person in that room had chosen to be there. Not because of obligation, because of love. But nothing stays quiet forever. A week before the wedding, Lana tried to crash the rehearsal dinner. The restraining order had expired, and she'd been watching through fake accounts, gathering details. She showed up dressed like she belonged, like nothing had happened. The moment she walked in, security escorted her out. As she was dragged toward the door, she shouted, "She's not even sick. She just wanted attention." No one responded. No one even looked at her. The silence was louder than any argument. Carol pulled me close afterward and whispered, "You have us now. She doesn't get to ruin that." That night, I lay awake for a while, not from fear, but from reflection. The woman who once had the power to dismantle me with a single word now had no access. Her voice didn't reach here, and the little girl inside me, who once begged for her sister's approval, she didn't exist anymore. 6 months later, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it ring. Then another. I answered out of habit more than curiosity. Riley, it's Sebastian. His voice sounded older. "Hey," I said, cautious but open. "I got your number from Luna. I hope that's okay." "Yeah. What's going on?" He hesitated. "Your mom's been telling people you abandoned the family during a rough patch, that you got a little sick and decided to punish everyone for not catering to you." My stomach didn't drop. My hands didn't shake. I just listened. She's still trying to spin it. Yeah, but not everyone's buying it. People remember the vacation posts, the court case, the GoFundMe. I exhaled slowly. "What's the real reason you called?" He paused. "I guess I wanted you to know, not everyone believes her. Some of us remember who you really were. And she's struggling. They all are. Your parents are renting a room from some guy in the suburbs. Greg works at a hardware store. Lana's in a shared apartment with 2 other people. She lost most of her followers. Mom's still asking people for money, but no one's giving her any." I didn't reply right away, just stared out the window, watching the city lights flicker like fireflies on glass. "I'm not telling you to fix anything," he said quickly. "I just thought maybe you'd want to know." "I appreciate the honesty," I said. And I did. But that was all. After we hung up, I didn't feel much. Not anger, not relief, just clarity. They were living with their choices. That wasn't revenge. That was consequence. The truth was, I had stopped carrying them a long time ago. I didn't check their social media. I didn't ask mutual acquaintances for updates. They were strangers with shared history, and I had stopped writing their names into my story. Instead, I wrote new chapters. I started mentoring younger women in tech. I launched a podcast on cybersecurity ethics. I traveled Tokyo, Lisbon, Cape Town. I built a scholarship fund under my name for underrepresented students in engineering. Every time I stood on stage or opened my inbox to thank you messages, I remembered the ICU room, the silence, the emptiness, the realization that if I didn't choose myself, no one would. And now people listened. Not because I demanded it, but because I had something worth hearing. Mochi turned 3 that summer. We threw her a tiny party with dog cupcakes and matching bandanas. Tom grilled in the backyard, Carol brought potato salad, and the kids played tag around the garden. Someone snapped a photo of me in the middle, laughing, holding a drink, surrounded by people who loved me, because they saw me, not because I served a function. That night, as the fire pit crackled and the stars came out one by one, Tom wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and kissed the top of my head. "Think they'll ever stop trying to spin it?" he asked. Maybe I said. Or maybe they won't. But either way, it doesn't matter anymore. He smiled. "Because you're happy. Because I'm whole." And I was. Not because everything was perfect, but because I had stitched myself back together with intention, with truth, with boundaries. I had built a life where their absence was not a wound, but a door that finally stayed shut. There was nothing left to say to them, nothing left to prove. I no longer needed closure. I had created peace. It's been 2 years since the ICU. 2 years since my phone lit up with photos of Mai Tais and manicures, while machines kept me alive. Some people measure time in birthdays or holidays. I measure it in freedom. The first time I opened a bill, and it was only mine. The first vacation I took without worrying about who would demand money while I was gone. The first time I spent a Sunday doing nothing, not out of exhaustion, but by choice. That was the new rhythm of my life, not marked by chaos, but by the absence of it. Tom and I married on a hilltop just outside the city, surrounded by the people who had shown up when it counted. Not a lavish ceremony, but real. The kind where everyone there had witnessed the unspoken chapters, the ones that hurt, healed, and built me back. We read our vows under an autumn sky. I didn't promise forever. I promised truth partnership, and that I would never again abandon myself for the sake of anyone's comfort. When we kissed, the wind picked up like nature was applauding. Mochi barked once, then curled up on my train like she'd always belonged there. Lana tried to come. She wasn't invited. We had a private location and quiet security just in case. She didn't make it far. She screamed something from the tree line about how I was faking everything, how I'd ruined the family. But no one turned to look. No one chased her away. She was escorted out without ceremony. Later, Carol took my hand and said, "Sweetheart, whatever hole she's yelling into it doesn't echo here." That was the moment I realized the legacy I'd left behind wasn't shame or bitterness. It was silence. Not empty, not cold, just clean. Some people would call what I did heartless. Others would call it necessary. I call it something else earned. Because when I think back to who I used to be, I see a girl who paid everyone's bills, sat silently through insults, and still asked what more she could give. I don't mourn her, I thank her. Because she's the one who walked through fire so I could stand here in this light unburned. Now, I run my own consulting firm. Small team, big impact. We advise startups on security strategy, and occasionally I get asked to speak at conferences about leadership and resilience. The word resilience used to make me cringe, like it implied suffering was a badge of honor. But now I see it differently. It's not about surviving chaos. It's about refusing to let it define you. And it's something you can build not alone, but with intention. I still get the occasional update through Sebastian. He never asks for anything, just checks in like a distant lighthouse keeping time. He told me recently that Greg finally retired. Lana's bounced from job to job, and my mother now spends her days bouncing between Facebook rants and sending distant cousins vague requests for support. I don't respond. I don't even flinch. They are living in the aftermath they created, and that's not cruelty. That's cause and effect. Sometimes I still hear people say family is everything, and I smile, not because I agree, but because I know better now. Family isn't just blood. It's not who shares your name or your face. It's who shares your fight, your stillness, your table. It's who walks in when the lights go out and stays without asking what's in it for them. That's what I have now. Not a perfect circle, but an honest one. Carol calls me her daughter. Tom calls me his lighthouse. My friends call me fierce. I don't need any of it to feel whole, but I accept it. Gratefully. Because there was a time when I would have traded it all, just to get a text back from people who couldn't be bothered to care. And maybe that's the real revenge. Not what I took away, but what I built without them. A few months ago, I ran into Greg at a grocery store. It was late. The aisles were half empty. He looked older than I remembered. Smaller somehow. He was holding a basket of marked down items, studying price tags like the numbers might change if he stared long enough. He looked up. Our eyes met. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he spoke, voice soft. "You look happy." "I am," I said. He nodded. "I know we messed up. I know we failed you. I don't expect anything. Just, I wanted you to know I see it now. What we lost." I nodded once, not angry, not forgiving, just acknowledging what he said. "Thank you," I told him. But seeing the loss doesn't undo the damage. He swallowed hard. "I hope one day you might believe we learned from it," maybe I said. But right now, I'm focused on the life I built with people who showed up. I walked away. I didn't turn around. I didn't feel sorry. I didn't feel smug. I felt clean. That's the strange thing about revenge. We think it's about burning bridges, about shouting from rooftops. But the real kind, the kind that lasts, it's about becoming untouchable. Not because you're hiding, but because you've grown so far beyond the hurt that they can't reach you even when they try. I wake up now beside someone who never makes me guess how he feels. I drink coffee in a kitchen I bought with my own salary, looking out at a skyline that used to feel too big for someone like me. I run a business where people respect me not for what I give, but for what I know. And every time I see Mochi wag her tail at the front door, I remember the girl in the hospital bed, pale, alone, wondering if anyone would show up. No one did, so she became the person she needed. And that made all the difference. Because sometimes the best way to win isn't to fight. It's to walk away, build something better, and never look back. Story 2. On Christmas, my family excluded me for 3 years. They told me to get out. After that, I located the letter. They took everything lawfully while hiding. I'm 33 years old, and my name is Eli. My favorite season used to be Christmas. For a few hours, the world seemed kinder with lights on the porch and cinnamon in the air. Or it did. About 3 years ago, things in my family started to change. However, the dam didn't burst until last Christmas. And it did, so right above my head. Just before 6 o'clock, I pulled into the driveway, anxious but optimistic. Under one arm, I held a wrapped bottle of wine. Something pleasant, aged, and not from the supermarket, along with a batch of cookies that were made by hand after staying up until 2 in the morning. My mother thought I looked like someone who would host a Hallmark special, so I even wore the red sweater she used to love. It was meant to be a gesture of goodwill, perhaps a sacrifice for peace. Since Mom's passing a few years ago, I hadn't been around much. And to tell the truth, the family situation had deteriorated. My sister Samantha reprimanded me for not going over more frequently. Aunt Brenda was always upset with me, usually, because I thought I was better than the others after moving out of town for work. However, I took Christmas for granted. For one night, we can all set aside our pride, right? Apparently not. Through the frosted glass, I pressed the doorbell. I saw laughter shadows and movement. Someone quickly closed the blinds after taking a quick look through them. The door flew open a second later. In all her passive-aggressive grandeur, Aunt Brenda stood there, wine glass in hand, sparkling reindeer sweater, and that unmistakable look of contempt reserved for me alone. "Oh," she answered bluntly, not trying to hide her annoyance. "Did you really show up?" I smiled politely at her. "Aunt Dee, have a happy Christmas." As though I had ruined her lovely carpet, she glanced over her shoulder and then sighed back at me. "You're not welcome here. Go spoil someone else's vacation." Like a whisper that could pierce bone, her voice was low and sharp. I blinked. "What?" She bent closer. Her face didn't change. "It is a family get-together. Over the past few years, you have made it quite evident that you are no longer a member of this family." I tried to look into the living room past her. My father was there, along with my uncles and other family members. Beneath the chandelier, they were all seated around the big table, warm and golden. Uncle Mike had said something that made Samantha laugh as she covered her plate with gravy, as though nothing was wrong. Dad carved the bird. No one had raised their gaze. No one has arrived to welcome me. I was out here, and everyone knew it. How long, I don't know. Stunned, I stood there. I started to say something, but all I managed to do was gasp. "I understand." Eventually, I gave a sincere response. I saw it all. Without turning around, I started down the stairs. I managed to keep my cookies steady, even though they slipped a little in the tray. I didn't slam the gate or run away. Instead, as the snow started to fall in big wet flakes that melted instantly, but kept the atmosphere so still that it seemed like the entire world was holding its breath. I walked back to my car. For a brief moment, I gripped the steering wheel while sitting in the car. It was a hollow sensation in my chest, neither anger nor despair. I spent 2 hours behind the wheel. I had prepared my response to Dad. In addition, even though Melanie never replied to my congratulations, I brought her a gift for her baby. Weeping would have been simple. Anger is even easier, but I refrained from doing so. All I did was whisper, "Grab it," and turn on the engine. After just 5 minutes of driving, my phone started buzzing. One call at first, then another. I let them go to voicemail, ignoring them. I was not interested in hearing it. No passion that is warranted. Brenda's expression when she said what she did could not be erased by a lie. It wouldn't take away the image of my whole family huddled in the warm light, as if I hadn't been there. The 10th call then came Dad. After a while, I answered, out of morbid curiosity if nothing else. "Eli," he said. His voice feeble. Shouting, and slamming doors were among the background noises. "Yes," I spoke softly. "You're where I'm headed home." "What?" He did not answer right away. In the background, Samantha was saying something I didn't understand. Then it was whispered. "He's not going to pick up Dad. Simply let it go." Dad wouldn't let it go, though. "Go around. Please. Something has occurred. Something has occurred." I spoke quietly. "What caused the turkey to become dry?" He ignored the insult. "Eli, please just return. You must return." I almost burst out laughing. "Do you want me to return right away? I was told to ruin someone else's holiday by your sister." Take a deep breath, Dad, like he's battling himself. I had no idea. God forbid I had no idea she had said that. It was only 10 minutes ago that I realized you were at the door. A thud, as though he were hurrying, perhaps reaching for a coat. After hearing wind, I heard footsteps. "Now where are you?" "About 10 minutes away," he asked. "Why?" He said, "I'm coming to get you. Simply remain in your current location." "Eli, please don't end the call." I took a while to reply. Then I saw headlights in the rearview mirror behind me. In a hurry, Someone had pulled out of the driveway. I found out then that my father had left. On the night of Christmas, he had actually left the house. He had never done it before. It was he who passed the rolls, cut the turkey, and made the toasts. Eli was the center of it all. He whispered once more, panting, "Hold on to me." I suddenly had the feeling that whatever came next would not be peaceful or simple. So the hollow in my breast started to twist, not into hope, but into something else. And everything would change because of what he was going to tell me. About a mile down the road, I pulled into a gas station parking lot. I parked on the edge next to an old dumpster and turned off the engine. The room was mostly dark, except for the flickering buzz of one overhead light and the flashing red digits of a lottery sign that hadn't been updated since Halloween. Tiny traces of snow resembling frostbite lace were appearing on the windshield. I didn't switch on the stove. My father's silver Subaru was struck by a car a minute later. When it came to a stop beside me, it gave a little squeal. He was wearing a jacket that was barely zipped, one glove on and the other in his fist when the door opened. He stood outside my car, his chest heaving without saying anything at first. The cold made his face flush. Or something else, perhaps. In the parking lot lights, he looked smaller and older. My window was broken. "Are you all right?" He gestured enthusiastically and nodded. "Please leave. I must speak with you." Not by way of glass. After hesitating, I finally went outside. It was a little windy. Snow melted on my neck and lodged in my hair. He gave me the impression that he hadn't seen me in a long time. Maybe he hadn't. "We didn't want you there," she said. He spoke in a tight, controlled voice, as though every word were containing a tsunami. "Go ruin someone else's holiday," she said. I informed her. He gave a little flinch. "We weren't like that. I wasn't that person. I was completely unaware that you were at the door." Samantha leaned over and whispered as I was chopping the dumb turkey. "Aunt Brenda took care of Eli, so don't worry." It wasn't until I noticed the vacant seat at the end of the table that I realized what she was talking about. I folded my arms. When handled, he seemed ill. "You must comprehend, Eli. Ever since your mother died, Brenda has gained access to everything. Decisions and holidays. Samantha is the golden child in you, according to her perverted perception. The humiliation. For him, I completed. It was almost worse that Dad did not argue. Years ago, I ought to have stopped it. "Oh," he said, "when your mother passed away, I allowed others to fill the void. The loudest filler was Brenda." I could see regret and remorse in his face. However, it didn't take away from the years I'd spent by myself on Christmas mornings, the birthdays they'd forgotten, or the conversations I'd been excluded from in silence during family gatherings. "Why now?" I inquired. "This time, why chase me?" He swallowed hard, considering that it has gone too far. Additionally, he paused to ponder. "Because after you left tonight, I discovered something in the kitchen drawer." As if it were holy, he carefully removed a folded piece of paper from his coat pocket. My fingers were numb when I took it. My mother wrote this letter to my son Eli. I blinked as my eyes ached. Dad explained solemnly that she wrote it before she passed away. "You got it from her. However, Brenda and Samantha..." He clenched his jaw. They had to have concealed it. I didn't know. Right up until tonight. To light the extra candles, I was searching for matches. And there it was. My hands were trembling as I opened it. It feels too personal, so I won't copy it verbatim. In summary, though, it was exactly what I needed to hear. She expressed her pride in me. She knew how people treated me, especially Brenda, and I shouldn't let them make me feel inferior. Her final Christmas wish was to keep me close to Dad. That I wasn't the letdown they made me out to be. How long I stood looking at the ink is a mystery to me. The silence is broken by the words of my father. This family wasn't what she wanted it to be. I can now shield you from it. but I couldn't before. A knot that had been knotted for years slowly and painfully changed within me, unwinding abruptly. I got this from her. They buried it after I muttered. He gave a nod. Brenda was aware of what would happen. She didn't tell you because of this. Samantha and I clenched the paper together. He hesitated. She allowed it to occur. She spent too much time listening to Brenda. She did, of course. The prejudice was always evident. Since we were young, Samantha has never done anything wrong. And me. I was the one who wasted potential by going to art school instead of law school, delaying marriage, and moving out of state. I've always found it hard to understand how a loving family could turn so cold towards someone who didn't fit the mold. My jaw tightened. I must be told the truth. Everything. My father hesitated, then nodded once. Then come back just for a moment, not to celebrate, to confront. I gazed at him. You're asking me to walk back into that house. I'm asking you to let them see what they tried to erase. I did not respond right away, but I began heading back to the car, toward the house that had tried so hard to forget me, and in my pocket, I held the one thing they couldn't take. Mom's words. Her truth. 10 minutes later, we pulled back into the driveway. Lights twinkled in the shrubs, and the warmth of the house shone through the windows, like a stage set awaiting its concluding act. But this time, I wasn't standing at the entrance waiting to be accepted. This time, I was lowering the curtain. What occurred when I walked through that door? They stopped laughing. The front door creaked open before I could reach it. My father must have contacted someone since Aunt Brenda was already standing in the hallway, lips pursed and arms folded like if I had arrived unannounced to a funeral. Well, she continued, look who's back. I stepped by her without speaking. The smell of honeyed ham and baked yams lingered in the air, blending with the low buzz of uneasy quiet as I stepped into the dining room. Every eye turned to me. Samantha's hand froze in mid-bite. Uncle Mike stopped drinking his wine. Even the dog stopped chewing the scraps it had grabbed from under the table. Nobody said anything. The room held its breath. I stared around the table, allowing the stillness to linger and soak up their thoughts. I then held up the letter. This, I continued slowly, was buried in a drawer, concealed. Brenda shuffled in the hallway, her fingers gripping the stem of her wine glass. That's private. You had no right. No, I replied sharply. You had no right. She wrote this to my son. Not to you, not to Samantha. To me. And you kept it from me. Samantha stood up, partly indignant and half uncomfortable. Eli, you don't even know the full story. That letter. Mom was sick when she wrote it. She wasn't thinking straight. I turned to face her completely. She was thinking clearly enough to say I was being left out, that you were allowing Brenda to treat me as if I were a mistake, and that Dad and you needed to step up. Her gaze flew to Dad, who stood calmly beside the doorway when she realized he wasn't going to save her. Her voice lifted slightly. You left. You moved away and ghosted us. I didn't ghost you, I responded quietly and firmly. You shut the door. I came to Mom's bedside and was told not to stress her out. I messaged you on her birthday. I called you when Dad had that fall. Every time it was a brick wall. And when I did show up, you made me feel like I didn't belong because you never stayed. With a hint of old animosity in her voice, Samantha spoke. You always left the rest of us here to handle everything, while you fled to your little artistic city life. I laughed, not in amusement, but in astonishment. You mean Brenda and yourself. Every time I attempted to reconnect, you two practically pushed me away. It was similar to attending a party. I was not wanted at all. As Aunt Brenda entered the room fully, she spoke once more. Her eyes narrowed and went cold. Perhaps it's because you always bring drama when you return. Without you, we've done perfectly right." I shrugged in response. "That's precisely why you made sure I never received this letter. Because you knew the truth in your heart. You were aware that she disapproved of the way you have been managing this family. She recognized you for who you truly are." Brenda's jaw tightened. "Reality remains unchanged by that letter. Following the death of your mother, we had to maintain our unity. We required an order." "Do you mean comment?" It was Dad's first quiet comment since we got there. Brenda gazed at him in wonder. "I'm sorry." Dad took a step forward and spoke firmly. "Brenda, you took charge. I told you that was my fault. But keep that letter you're wearing hidden." There was no sound at all at the table. My cousins now shifted in their seats and cast uneasy glances around. The baby in the bassinet cooed softly, the only innocuous noise in the whole house. Samantha slowly sat down again, as though her legs had given out. "Eli, what do you want? You only returned to cause a stir." I cocked my head. "I returned because I wanted to hear what my mother had to say to me before she passed away, and because I felt my dad should know what his wife wanted." I stepped over to the table and carefully positioned the letter in the middle, close to the untouched cranberry sauce. "I now want the truth to be known. You all attempted to remove me from my own family history, and I want you to sit with that. And I want you to acknowledge that you allowed it to happen, Samantha, by looking me in the eye." Samantha didn't raise her gaze. She opened her mouth as though to speak, but nothing came out. I turned to go. I heard a voice behind me as I got closer to the threshold, but I wasn't here to ask for forgiveness or listen to excuses. "Hold on," Dad said before you leave. He walked over to the table, took his wine glass and raised it a little. "I believe we have one more toast to make." Even though I didn't look around, I could sense that everyone was watching him. His voice was loud as he exclaimed to my son, the only person in this room who didn't let rot fester beneath the tablecloth while acting as though nothing was wrong. To the sole individual present who still understands the meaning of family. He put down his drink. Nobody cheered. There was no echo of the toast. I returned to the snow. Behind me, the door closed softly, and I didn't feel empty this time. I had another feeling. A storm is on the horizon, since I wasn't done yet. Not quite yet. That night, I didn't go back to my apartment. Rather, I booked a room at a small inn by the lake, where I had visited with my mother as a child. The woman at the front desk didn't ask any questions, and it was the only place open on Christmas night. Rather, she said the heater was flawless and gave me a key while grinning warmly. After thanking her, I went back to my room and sank on the bed's edge. I was finally overcome by the silence. I scanned the letter once more, tracing the words with my fingertips. I learned something new every time I read it. Something else about her voice, care, and rhythm. The letter was closed by her. "Never again allow them to silence you. The world will try to minimize you. However, I brought you up to be wiser. I will always love you. Mom." I just sat there thinking for a long time. I took a stroll around the frozen lake the following morning. The air had the sharp, sharp bite of midwinter, and the sky was a dull silver. Voicemail texts and missed calls buzzed on my phone. At last, Samantha had spoken up. "We need to talk to you," and "really embarrass the entire family" were among the messages. I didn't answer. Not quite yet. I had to do things my way. Upon returning to the inn, I opened my laptop, took a seat at the little wooden desk by the window, and started writing. The first document I scanned was the letter. I then wrote a statement to go with it that wasn't sarcastic or exaggerated. Just the facts. The reality. Mom used to read my private blog, which I posted online. Everyone who was seated around the Christmas table then received an email with the link. I waited after that. About 4 hours later, the fallout started. Logan, my cousin, was the first to look. Although we never had a close relationship, he was always kind to me in that hazy period. I will remain out of its way." He didn't say much. "Eli, I had no idea. I apologize. I was devastated by that letter. I ought to have defended you. Everyone ought to have. I hadn't gotten an apology from anyone in years until that moment." Aunt Brenda sent the second message. Not like Logan's. Hers was hatred cloaked in compassion. "By exposing your private affairs, you are committing an error, such as why family affairs ought to be kept private. Do you really want to cause an irreparable rift? Since I wasn't the cause of the rift, I read it and then removed it. It was the outcome of every door being slammed, invitation being turned down, and whisper behind my back. I wasn't dividing people. I was recognizing the person who had always been there. That night, Samantha gave a call. I almost didn't answer, but my curiosity won out. She spoke carefully. "Eli, not yet hostile. Look, I saw the letter you posted. However, I didn't read it all. However, what I asked. I believe we should speak face to face rather than virtually. It's a family issue. You spoke for years. I told you that you had chances to give me a call. Bring me to birthday celebrations. I appreciate you sending the gifts. You didn't. The one thing my mother left me was buried by you. And you want to talk now that people are finally recognizing who you are." On the other end, there was silence. "Do you truly wish to make this right?" I asked. "Then come clean in public. Take ownership of it. What do you own?" "Brenda, and you did. I can't just... You see, Eli, you know how this looks. We are now being judged by everyone." "Excellent." I gave a firm response. "Now perhaps you will know how I felt every holiday when you all treated me like an outsider." After that, she didn't call again. Others, though, surpassed my expectations. Margot, an old friend of my mother, sent me a message. It had been years since she had spoken to our family. She claimed that the letter brought her to tears, and that even before she got sick, my mother had always worried about Brenda's treatment of me. She apparently asked Margot to remain near me after she passed away. However, Brenda had also picked it up and told Margot that I needed room. I expressed my desire for some privacy to everyone. Since I was unaware of the story's revisions, until now I agreed to let them. I went back to the house a few days later, but not for Christmas or to make amends. I had a reason for being there. On the front steps, Dad greeted me. He looked tired, but alert, as though he had just woken up from a long sleep. "They're in here," he said. "Samantha, Brenda." The others departed. I gave a nod. "Let's get this done." Together we entered. As though rehearsing for a major speech, Brenda was pacing the living room while holding a drink. Samantha's eyes were red with tension or annoyance as she sat tightly on the couch. I denied them the opportunity to begin. "I am filing a lawsuit," I said. "I spoke with an attorney. You may have intercepted personal mail, manipulated my mother's communication, and concealed her letter. Even though it's not illegal, it's unethical. Additionally, it is grounds for denying you any future family decision-making authority." After blinking, Brenda burst out laughing. "After family choices? This family hardly includes you. You said, that's funny, because I recently got back in touch with 10 relatives, including Aunt Nadine, who have different opinions. Remember her. Next month she will take a plane to visit me for the first time in a decade." She apparently believed I had interrupted her. I wonder how she came up with that concept. Samantha turned her head away. Dad moved forward. "Now is the time for things to change. Eli ought to have received his mother's letter right away. I no longer trust you both because you kept it from him after everything." Brenda told Thomas to be reasonable. He gives a head shake. "No, you tricked us. You persuaded me that my son didn't mind his deliberate distance. After we lost her, I allowed you to fill the void, and I regret it every day. I'm rewriting the will, he said, glancing at me, with immediate effect. Samantha jerked her head up. What you no longer have my trust when it comes to this family's history. His voice was cold as he answered. It was Eli who paid tribute to your mother. It was he who spoke the truth. Brenda sputtered. You're allowing everything to be undone by one letter. No, I said. That's what you did. I handed a copy of the letter to her. Go through it. Read it carefully. Then consider how someone could ever defend concealing it. I didn't stay for the remainder. That was the last time I left that house. I held my head high as the sun started to peek out from behind the gloomy weeks of the past, and the wind blew across my face. Dad followed through on his promise to amend the will. We started getting together on Sundays, only the two of us. After too much stress, we gradually started to repair the damaged link. One February afternoon, he even went with me to the lake. We discussed Mom because she wasn't the filtered, edited version of herself that Brenda had filtered over the years. Brenda and Samantha made a few fruitless attempts at reconciliation and damage control. Samantha didn't mention my name in her public post about forgiveness, but I didn't care. Most people could see right through it. I finally understood something. Family is not about blood. It doesn't matter who turns up to dinner or shares your surname. It's about who stands with you when the truth is revealed. And thanks to that letter, my mother's parting gift, I discovered my voice again. They attempted to lock the door on me. I strolled through it anyway. This time, I made sure it banged shut behind me. Story 3. When I refused to pay my brother's $100,000 debt, my family threw me out on my birthday. So I turned to leave, ruined their reputation in a single email. Liam, happy birthday. My mother started off in a cheerful fake voice, as though she hadn't just guilt-tripped me for not offering to pay off John's car loan an hour earlier. A piece of store-bought cake was in front of me. Half-melted wax was dripping from a crooked 30 candle, and I was seated at the end of the dining table, with a beer in one hand and one arm. Languidly draped over the chair, my father slouched across from me. In one hand, my brother John, 28, who was unemployed and clearly disliked having responsibilities, was using his new iPhone that I had bought to message on the other, while in the other hand, he was browsing through his phone. I cleared my throat and said that. I made an effort to maintain my composure despite my racing heart. We must discuss the money. Dad gave a grunt. Mom blinked. John didn't raise his gaze. I acknowledged that I couldn't continue to cover everything. My goal is to create a future for myself. Here, I've been paying for groceries, utilities, and the mortgage. Last year, I settled John's second DUI fine. I have to make some cuts. John raised his head. You're behaving as though it's charity. I gazed at him. Yes, it is. He chuckled. Whoa. All right then. With his eyes scowling as though I had just insulted the Pope, Dad leaned forward. Then begin with the 6-figure debt owed by your brother. Isn't that the true problem? As though she wished he hadn't said it out loud. Mom shot him a sidelong glance. John froze. I refuse to pay that. Quietly, I answered. I'm not in charge of that. The room grew cold. No one shifted. A frown twisted his lips as Dad leaned back. Well, she said, I suppose we are aware of your position. My clothes, books, tools, and the laptop I used for freelancing were all neatly arranged on the porch when I got home from work the following day. The locks were different. A note was affixed to the door. Think about your actions. All it said was that. I stood there for a long time, awestruck by my mother's crisp, precise, and unmistakable handwriting. I didn't knock. I didn't shout. I refrained from crying. I inhaled deeply, gathered my belongings, and turned to leave. Next, I scheduled the message. Everything changed the next morning. To comprehend how we received a note that felt like a slap and a birthday eviction. You must go back a decade. John totaled his first car when I was 20 years old. They were obviously intoxicated. Mom broke down. When Dad yelled, I, the golden oldest son with a reliable job and no criminal history, gave him a $3,000 loan for repairs and paid the trophy. He never paid it back. Although it was intended to be an isolated incident, it inadvertently created a pattern. I should take responsibility for not helping John with his studies when he left college. When he overdrafted his account after losing 3 jobs in a single year, I learned that some people just have it harder. Mom used to describe me as pliable and troubled by guilt. Liam is your brother, my dear. Why don't you just cover now? I always did. After John was kicked out, I paid the rent. He drove his car to parties while I walked to work, and I paid the insurance for it. I was still able to pay for my electrical system certification night classes, buy groceries, and pay our parents' property taxes when they fell behind. John continued to do nothing productive but work on music in the basement during the day. Which aspect is the worst? He didn't even act appreciative. He pretended that he owed it. Liam is doing very well. Waving his hand as though I were a faceless ATM, he would add. He's got it. Big brothers are there for that. My folks loved it. Every time I brought up the possibility of moving out, my mother would cry and remark, "This house only feels like a home with you in it." "Don't be dramatic," Dad would say, reminding me that I only paid a portion of the expenses like the phone plan, which wasn't enough. "How about John? Why leave when you've got it so good?" He would smirk. Yes, it was pleasant for me. While my brother borrowed money from me to purchase new headphones, I was working 60-hour weeks and hardly seeing the light of day. Dad used my paycheck to fix the air conditioner while I skipped lunch to save money. He told me to be grateful that I didn't have to deal with a landlord. 2 months prior to my birthday, everything came to a head. John was getting ready for a party when I arrived home from a 14-hour shift. His sound system was hooked up to my gaming PC, which I had assembled piece by piece over the course of 5 years in the living room. Beer bottles littered the floor, and his friends had collapsed on the couch. I had a sticky keyboard. I didn't shout. I simply disconnected everything and put everything back in my room. My mother lectured me the following morning. "You embarrassed him," she added in a scathing tone. "His friend caught you acting like a crazy person. They were utilizing my belongings," I clarified. She shot back, "It's not just your house. Here everything is shared." I was hit hard by the word shared, such as the groceries I bought, the mortgage I paid, and the electricity payment that was physically deducted from my account. I looked over my finances that evening. I was very close, using only a few months' worth of savings. This time, I'll be able to go for good. Then John came up with a brilliant new business idea, trading cryptocurrencies. He lost everything in 2 weeks after investing $25,000 from his school loans, which he had no plans to pay back. He placed the blame on his friends, the market, and the app. Then he looked at me. He said, "You could spot me 10 grand, as though he were asking for a lift to the shop to help me get back on course." I chuckled, and I said no for the first time in years. The tone shifted at that point. I was no longer trustworthy. I was elitist, ungrateful, and self-centered. "Do you believe that you are now superior to us?" One evening after supper, Dad asked. "Simply because you have some cash on hand," I said. "I'm not better. I'm simply worn out." John thought I wouldn't see the tweet he sent the following morning. According to the article, some people only donate when they think they can manipulate you. Cut them off so their real face can show. More than 300 people liked him. I remained silent. When my birthday arrived, I foolishly and naively thought we might be able to maintain a cordial relationship. A small cake, a quiet dinner. There isn't any drama. Rather, I encountered an ambush. My father watched me the whole time. "You're daring me to mention money. John is making jokes about me having to trust him. There is no such thing as money." Mom's smile was too bright, as though she could control everything with enough phony zeal. When I finally said, "I can't keep paying for everything," the dam broke. "Then begin with the 6-figure debt owed by your brother," Dad said, not in jest or as a challenge, but as a demand. And they didn't dispute when I said no. They just tossed me out like trash. However, they were mistaken. They didn't remember who taught me to remain silent, to wait, and to never respond. This time, I had a strategy. I didn't reply to their message. I didn't knock. I didn't send a text. Didn't cry. I simply packed my belongings into the back seat of my old Toyota and headed to the least expensive motel I could locate. It was one of those motels by the side of the road where the vending machine and cigarettes filled the air. Without hesitation, eat your money. The note was still crumpled in my fist as I sat on the edge of the bed. Think about what you did. Yes, I did. I gave it a lot of thought. I scheduled the message after that. You see, I've discovered a few things over the years. Among these is the fact that every family tells itself a unique story or folktale. This is how ours went. Liam is trustworthy. Liam is always willing to help. Liam is always there. We can do anything we want because he always shows up. They were unaware that I had spent the previous 2 years recording everything. All of the Venmo requests are included. Transfer of invoices. Each time I lend a helping hand. Every time an aggressive message or guilt trip is sent, I keep the receipt. I recorded, saved, and dated each time they said, "You're being dramatic," in response to my pleas for boundaries. Then there was the letter I wrote just before my birthday, several months ago, when I was first thinking about going. It wasn't a letter of farewell. It was an all-encompassing confession. How because the bank called me not them, I paid off my second mortgage without telling them. How I found out that, thank God, John had used my identity to apply for a $15,000 personal loan. However, the question was still listed on my credit report. How my parents were aware of it and told me not to press charges. They said, families stick together. Until I did not, I was stuck. I was evicted from the house I had paid for that morning. I sent it. I did more than just forward it to them. I sent it to everyone in our family. Uncle Rob in New Jersey, my father's siblings, my mother's family, their church group, my godmother in Tampa, and everyone else. Everything is arranged correctly, including bank records, text messages, voice recordings, screenshots, and receipts. Even a spreadsheet called "What Liam Actually Paid For" is attached. It became viral within our family in less than an hour. By lunchtime, my phone had 26 missed calls from Mom and 8 from Dad. John did not call. He sent one text message. "You didn't have to do that. It was frigid." I didn't answer. At 12:37 p.m., my Aunt Sylvia, whom I hadn't seen in years, sent me this message. "Good for you. I've always known they were using you. I'm proud of you, honey." Then came the fallout. Apparently, my parents' reputation in their small suburban bubble meant more to them than I realized. The picture of the ideal close-knit, morally upright family was destroyed. People began asking questions. Why was Liam paying the bills while John was on vacation? Why did the note on the door resemble something from a Lifetime movie? Why did John get new headphones? Footwear and tattoos while unemployed? Why did Liam reside in the basement as if he were a tenant despite paying for everything? Dad tried spinning it. We were giving him structure. He informed a relative. It was all agreed upon. Wrong move. I had attached a recording from the night they kicked me out. I'd been recording with my phone, which I had placed into my jacket pocket before supper. The voice note was very clear. Dad, then start with your brother's debts. Me. I am not paying that, Dad. Now get out. Mom. Think about what you did. They could not spend that. The kicker. I also reported a stolen identity case. I let it slide. The first time. No more. When the police arrived at the house to question John about the bogus loan attempt, things became heated. A neighbor captured everything on video. Angry voices, a slammed door, and John ranting something about how he deserved a break. Someone, perhaps my mother, yelled, "We told you not to make this worse." That clip was shared on the local neighborhood Facebook group. And just like that, the family that used to gossip about other people's dramas became front-page news. I didn't see it happen. I was too busy moving into my new downtown apartment, a one-bedroom above a flower shop, quiet sunlight in the morning, a kitchen that did not smell of previous disputes. I paid the deposit with money that I should have saved all along that night. I sat on the couch with no TV, only my laptop and some takeout, and watched the madness develop from afar. They tried calling me again dozens of times when I did not respond. Mom showed up at my workplace. She waited in the lobby, her eyes red, carrying a Tupperware of my favorite dish, as if it had been used for years. I met her outside. She opened her mouth, but I interrupted her. "I'm not coming back," I clarified. Calm, even cold. "Liam," she murmured, "you're tearing this family apart." I chuckled. "No," I said. I simply stopped trying to keep my composure. She winced, and I didn't feel bad for once. Everything changed at that point. Not just the dynamics within the family. At last I could see them well, not like helpless parents, not as a frail brother, but as individuals who had made choices time and time again. The consequences were now being felt by them. For the first time in my life, I find it odd that silence can seem louder than yelling. Neither Dad's polo shirt-clad tantrum nor the sound of John's music rattling the drywall woke me up. I wasn't evading my mother's passive-aggressive outbursts in anticipation of the next emotional conundrum. Rather, I felt silence. I didn't check to see if anyone had used the last of the milk when I made coffee in the morning. I didn't have to worry about losing my wallet if I left it on the counter. I didn't have to defend every purchase restriction or breath. No one requested money. No one asked for an explanation. No one sent me a manipulative text. At first, it was eerie. I kept hoping that the silence would end, as though when I walked in the door, I would see John sprawled on my couch with his shoes on the cushions, pleading with me to find him again. However, they never showed up. Initially, the calls continued. Mom's voice was weak and tinged with guilt as she left long voicemails. "This isn't you, Liam. You've always been the one who helps and is strong. Don't let pride destroy our family, please." Only one text message was sent by Dad. "You ought to feel pleased with yourself." I didn't answer. Communication eventually slowed and eventually stopped. John sent me a handwritten letter 3 weeks after I moved out. It was surprisingly short. I know that I erred in judgment. All I was doing was what they always let me do. Now, however, everything is against me. Both parents are in disarray. We no longer hear from anyone. You destroyed everything. Hopefully it was worthwhile. I'm not sorry. Just blame. That told me everything I needed to know. I didn't answer. Rather, I started working to restore what they had tried to take away from me. After years of putting it off because we needed help paying the bills this month, I finally signed up for a coding boot camp. I started working as a freelancer in the evenings, saving for the future I wanted, rather than the one they made me finance. I discovered sincere friends, who only asked for honesty. People who were more interested in my identity than in my income. I joined a climbing gym in my area. I rediscovered my passion for risk-taking and movement, pushing myself on my own terms rather than dragging people who wouldn't move. Additionally, therapy was beneficial. As it happens, being the fixer for years leaves invisible scars. When a child is expected to behave emotionally and financially like an adult, it's known as parental fixation, according to my therapist. She made it clear to me that I was never self-centered. I was tired. They imploded in the old house in the meantime. Mom had to return to her job. She hated it. She had been using someone else's money to play home manager for the past 10 years. Mine. Dad started to drink more. When a neighbor asked him about Liam's situation, he reportedly got into a heated argument. I've been informed that John has finally secured employment at the gas station. The duration was 6 days. Then, like he always does, he blamed the manager for the withdrawal of extended family members. They had witnessed too much. I overheard. The myth of our contented little family was not supported by the evidence. I also didn't give a damn. I wasn't trying to fix it for the first time in my life. Thanksgiving was not attended by me. Instead of treading carefully, I spent it with a friend's family, who laughed at the dinner table. I brought some pies. They truly meant it when they referred to me as family. My godmother sent me a card for Christmas. There was a short note inside. You finally asserted your right to better. You have my admiration. As I read it, I started crying. I felt understood for the first time, not because I was depressed. In your past life, you know what happens after you start a fire. Nothing. No large explosions occur. No reconciliations at the last minute. Nothing but quiet. And I have never heard anything so beautiful. My phone did not ring with last-minute money pleas or guilt-inducing texts for the first time in 30 years. No urgent calls about John's license being revoked, Dad needing tax assistance, or Mom sobbing because we no longer feel like a family were received. They thought I would crawl back. They've always done so. They thought I would feel bad. They anticipated that I would feel isolated. However, this is what took place. I was liberated. I was able to breathe. I didn't have to worry about someone stealing my food, taking my keys, or endangering my future because I could stand in my own place, which I had paid for, furnished, and cleaned. For so long, I had been carrying my family around that I had forgotten what it was like to walk upright, to live for oneself, to be superfluous. I was once called the backbone of the family. No, the fuse was me, as well as now that I've left. They stoked a fire around me that can only return to them. I met John 2 months after the incident. It was in a gas station, of course. His name tag was crooked, and he was behind the counter. The eyes are sunk. It was a tired imitation of a better version of himself, but he still had that fake swagger. "Liam," he replied with a grin. "I was surprised to see you in town." I simply nodded. He leaned closer. "You realize that you truly messed up for them?" I blinked. "You're referring to the time I stopped covering your debt." He gave a shrug. "The fallout is still affecting them. You truly created a mess." I gave him a direct look. "You think that by making my life better, I'm destroying yours." Then, as if he couldn't believe the ATM had left, I paid for my gas and left him staring at the door. He hasn't figured it out yet, because individuals like John do not learn from the consequences neither of them does. Not until the money is exhausted. The spotlight goes away, and I won't stay to witness the outcome of that lesson. Here are some things about leaving a dysfunctional family that no one tells you. It's not the distance that hurts. It is realizing that you have never experienced unconditional love. Your bank account sacrifice and silence made you valuable. However, love isn't love if it lacks respect. Leverage is what it is. So would you ever talk to them again when they ask? I finally value myself more than their approval, so I don't hesitate. In the past, I craved their approval just as much as oxygen. Every promotion, every loan, every good grade. I returned a sincere wish that they would take notice of me this time, but all they saw was what I could offer. I had no idea who I was underneath it. No, I see myself now. A man paid off 3 other people's mortgages. He never tried, but a man stayed up late to tutor his brother. A man who did not turn off the lights. And a house where he was always treated like an outsider. At last, a man said, "No more." I started over and built a new life. This time, responsibility or guilt are not the foundation. It's calm. It's a choice. I own it. On the weekends, I go hiking, read, and go to classes. I've been putting off learning photography for years because of other urgent financial obligations. The person I'm dating doesn't need saving inquires about my day and doesn't accuse me of being selfish for establishing limits. I sometimes lie in bed late at night and think back to the child I was. The one who walked carefully in his own house, who ceremoniously gave him his paycheck, who thought that if he worked hard enough, they would properly love him. And I mutter, "You left. You succeeded. You no longer owe them silence. Let them talk. Let them tell a different story. Let them call me cold, theatrical, and ungrateful, because this is the reality. Without me, they will never be able to speak in public. Their system didn't work. In my absence, their lies had no effect. Not with me. Eventually, the truth came out loud, uncooked, unquestionable. I didn't even have to shout. I simply turned to leave. And sometimes leaving the door locked is the most subdued act of disobedience.